gentlemen, with that, we now move forward to the overview of the Indian tooling industry. For this, may I request Mr. Aashutosh Sinha, Principal Business Performance Improvement, Nomura Research Institute, Consulting and Solutions, to join us on stage.
Today is something which is not new, but a little bit of elements of the market, where basically because of the association that we've had with TAGMA, we've been working with TAGMA for quite some time, so we understand, thanks to all the inputs that we've received from that members, understand the market a little bit, I would say. And what we'll present today is basic overview of the tooling industry and how we can gear up for the future. So I think the presentation is anyway on up. So let me begin. How can we control the... Yeah. Yeah. So I think essentially there are 4 topics that I intend to cover today. One is, of course, the overview of the Indian tooling industry, where I give a glimpse of the current state, which in terms of the market, in terms of import, export, how does the industry look like. Then, of course, some of the future trends, which a lot of people before me have also talked about. But, of course, in terms of what that brings, what imperatives that brings for the industry at large, that is something that I'll touch upon. Third element, major challenges and government interventions. So, again, something not which is new to us. We all know that the industry faces a plethora of challenges. We will try and throw some light on that. And, of course, then the last is an interesting one, where we say that, as I think in the last discussion also, we heard that all that needs to be done lies within us. So what essentially could be done by the tool rooms to improve the current business state, and of course then get more and more business and of course gearing up for the future. So I think in terms of the overall tooling industry, this is not something which is news to us. The countries with the highest vehicle production, and I'm stressing upon the vehicle production because 60% of the tooling demand goes to the automotive industry. So countries with highest vehicle production are leading in the tooling industry, with the exception of India. So India's tooling ranking globally is 20th, whereas the vehicle production ranking is in the top 4. I think to be precise, 3rd. In terms of the market size, again, the numbers are being updated, as Mr. Shan also mentioned in the morning. The updated numbers will be there in the report that we present in about a month's time. But the 2020 numbers indicate the overall market to be around 18,000 crores. That is split across the commercial tool rooms, which is basically the Indian tool rooms who are operating for the commercial business. That's around 43% of the share. The captive tool rooms, most of the OEMs and tier 1 suppliers and the customers have the captive tool rooms. That is close to around 27%. And of course, a significant portion is coming through imports, which is close to around 30%. So that is something which has always been a cause of concern for the industry. In terms of the CTR, which is the commercial tool room supply split, out of the total 8,800 crores, the domestic supply is around 88%, and exports is, again, very small amount, which is close to around 12%. But the updated imports and the exports numbers is something that this is for FY23. So in FY2023, we imported close to around 8,000 crores worth of tooling, out of which plastic molds forms a sizable chunk, close to around 40%, which approximately 3,000 crore. Sheet metal dies is around, again, 26%, and equal is around die casting dies, and jigs and fixtures is around 11%. Major import destinations, of course, no surprises there. Again, China leading the pack with 38%, Korea, Japan, and Taiwan followed by Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. Korea is again a significant portion of the import sources for us again. In terms of the exports, in 2023 we exported close to around 2,000 crore. Again, a large part of that being dominated by plastic molds and then die casting dies. Followed by sheet metals and jigs and fixtures. US is one of the biggest export destinations, though the overall export volumes the value is not extremely big, but US is with 17% share. So again, this is basically a breakup, and we were trying to compare it from the last study that we did. So in 2019 versus what we are looking at in the current scheme of things in 2023. The one good sign is that the imports look to have been stabilized. So we imported close to around 8,000 crores, including jigs and fixtures and others. And in 2023 also we are importing close to around 8,000 crores. However, of course, the percentage share for China has grown significantly from 28% to 38%, taking a little bit of share from South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. The plastic molds imports have increased from 29% to 38%, and the share of die casting dies, of course, has decreased. This is quite in line with the overall demand trends as well. As we see, the EV transition is in the automotive industry. That is something where a lot of startups, a lot of new two-wheeler companies have started to come in. Essentially, they do not have the engineering prowess or do not want to invest in those tooling capabilities as of now, and they are looking for full service outsourcing of tooling, which the Indian tool rooms are not currently able to get that business, and hence the entire piece of tooling chunk is getting imported from China in the current scheme of things. In terms of export, if we see, I think there's a significant increase compared to 2019 figures from FY23. I mean, of course, the share of US remains close to around 15 to 17% there. So this was a view on the current scheme of things. How does the tooling industry look like? But let's talk about what trends are. And some of these trends were already covered in the previous sessions, but I'll touch upon some of them. So one, of course, a major trend in terms of the automotive industry is the shift to EVs. That is something which is going to impact the industry. And why we say so is because 60% of the demand for the tooling is still coming from the automotive industry. Now, what does that lead to? Of course, that leads to a lot of lightweighting needs. We all know battery packs are heavy, and hence there will be requirement for lightweighting. Essentially, and that is what we hear from a lot of customers also when we speak to the OEMs who are our clients, or in general when we speak to the OEMs, that's something that is a desire that has been expressed multiple times over, that we need capabilities, local capabilities in high tensile and ultra high tensile parts and molds, of course, then. So that is something that we see as a very strong opportunity, which is currently being largely met through imports. But that is something that the Indian tool rooms would need to look upon and work towards. Similarly, I think overall, as we see in general, the moving parts and in the EVs reduce compared to ICE. So that will start to impact the die casting dies market that we already saw in the last discussion. We touched upon that. And of course, then expertise in new material handling like lithium, like nickel, cobalt, manganese would start to become commonplace, and that will be expected from the tool rooms to start handling these kind of materials. And demand for high integrity structural parts through die cast and weight reduction, again, I think we touched upon that in the earlier panel discussion as well. That is expected to increase. Lightweighting materials, overall, I think lightweight materials market is expected to reach close to around 100 billion by 2025, largely led by automotive and in aviation, because these are the industries which have a lot of use cases for lightweight materials. The substitutes like plastic, aluminium, manganese are expected to increase at a CAGR of around 8% by 2030. So the tooling industry again needs to gear up to that kind of a change as well. The short product life cycle, again, I think this is something which is known to us. The consumers are upgrading their vehicles much faster than they used to do earlier. So from the earlier 8 to 10 years, now they are upgrading their vehicles in 4 to 5 years' time. That means more model changes, more facelifts, and hence more demand for tooling. But at the same time, I think more and more, because of the overall customization and the balance between customization and cost is something which will be imperative for the OEMs. A lot of OEMs will also start to move into modular manufacturing and design, and that is where I think the tool rooms will also have to gear up to that. And I think the theme of the today's discussion is around exploring diversity. So there are some sunrise sectors or developing sectors that we identify. Of course, India's defense allocation is expected to increase by 12.5% to approximately 6 lakh crores by 23-24. That opens up a lot of doors or opportunities for Indian toolrooms, especially because 25% of the defense R&D budget is earmarked for private industry and startups. So that's something that is an opportunity to capitalize on. Indian medical devices sector is again projected to reach around $50 billion by 2025. A lot of precision tooling is the need, where again that is something that will that is one of the capabilities that the tool rooms will have to start looking at. So these trends essentially need some design modification, some technological advancements. So of course, focus on design modifications due to lightweighting and new opportunities. Investment in some new processes. Some OEMs have started exploring hot stamping as well, and ultra-high tensile strength steels, UHSS. So those are some of the areas where I think the tool rooms will need to catch up. And of course, more investment in modular dies will be required. And in terms of technological advancements, high precision machines, and the new sectors, especially the aviation, defense, and medical instruments, these have very low tolerances, and as I think we touched upon that, accuracy and lead time requirements are key for these sectors, and hence that will need to be kept in mind while serving to these sectors. On the supply side, again, some trends, automation and digitization is going to improve the productivity by 50%. Thus, that is something that a lot of that is something that the tool rooms will have to start capitalizing on. More and more digitization and productivity improvement will start to get into a virtuous cycle of generating positive cash flows as well. Multi-axis machining is now moving towards micro machining to assist in semiconductor-based manufacturing. I think we touched upon that in the earlier panel as well, and rapid prototyping and on-demand production of custom tools, which will reduce the overall lead time and then third-party costs as well. That is something, another trend on the supply side. On the new production processes, on new materials, again, carbon fiber is something that needs to be looked at. It offers flexibility and low cost per cubic inch. And of course, high-strength alloy steel, which will, with yield strength ranging from 260 to even more than 1,000 MPa, is something that is going to come in place. Now, this was around the future trends and what the tooling industry needs to do. I think this is something which does not need. I mean, we've spoken about this a lot of times. We all know. But this is more of a reiteration and putting this. I mean, basically, when I put this slide up, it is more of a representation of the voice of the entire fraternity here. So essentially, just to summarize the challenges, I think the tool rooms in India face a lot of challenges, plethora of challenges. If we try and structure them around areas, financing, high cost of financing, because a large part of the sector is MSME. So there is a challenge in terms of financing, and even when you get the financing, the interest rates are much higher because of the overall credit worthiness of the tool room is not something which the banks and it is not a priority sector lending as of now. So that is where the interest rates are considerably higher than the market. In terms of human resource, when we say lack of skilled labor, essentially what we touched upon is that it's a very niche area. People who have skill in these areas is difficult to find, A, and B, because of the MSME sector, the tool rooms are finding it hard to retain the talent as much because there are much more lucrative opportunities for these people, for these engineers, for these talented engineers to either move to the OEMs or move out of the manufacturing sector at all. I mean, and engineering services outsourcing is another sector which is coming up. So essentially, the tool rooms find it very difficult to retain that talent. The lack of ecosystem, of course, lack of standardized payment. As we work on a very tough payment cycle. A lot of OEMs do not pay advance, and then of course, because of the reworks and failures that we have, the payment cycle is extremely affected there. Lack of export incentives, that is from the government side, and that is more from a regulatory side, and lack of the outsourcing ecosystem. Again, that is something which we've talked about in a lot of earlier ITS also. That the heat treatment or machining parks, everything has to be, for most of the tool rooms, all of that is in-house, which impacts the overall balance sheet and the P&L of the tool rooms, and hence it impacts the overall operations. Thus, if a robust outsourcing ecosystem is there. For instance, that is something which is prevalent in Taiwan, which is one of the leading tool markets, despite not being a leading vehicle market. So that is something that needs to be developed, and a lot of collaboration is needed there. And in terms of industrial, lack of concurrent engineering, and of course, that is something that we've always kept hearing, lack of support from OEMs and tier ones. I think that's something that probably the industry will always have as a demand from their customers. But I think there have been certain interventions and we've tried to cover that, especially from the regulatory point of view. I'll not go and get into details of each of the schemes, but there have been certain schemes in the place. The latest one being the enhancement of competitiveness of the capital goods. Phase 1 which was launched in 2014, and the phase 2 of which has been launched in 2022. Essentially, it aims to create common engineering facility centers, machine tool parks, technology acquisition fund, and industry accelerators, and of course, in addition to promotion of skilling. Till today, I think some achievements of this policy or intervention has been that there's been one CEFC or Common Engineering Facility Center, one Center of Excellence in Madras, 6 tech innovation platforms, and 1 integrated industrial facility which has been created so far because of these interventions. But again, these are some of the interventions, but doesn't address the problems at large for the industry. Now, what needs to be done? I think essentially we will all agree when I say that the tooling industry or the tool rooms are stuck in a vicious cycle. So let's say the overall value creation framework, if we see, it's basically 2 things. One is profitability, and the other is working capital and investments, which impact your overall cash flow regime, and that is how your investments or your business is being valued currently. Vicious cycles are typically broken by infusion of private capital, but essentially a lot of tool rooms are even willing and open to seek the private capital. But to seek private capital, the first step is to, private capital, when I say, is when you give out some bit of your equity in the business and you start running it more professionally through through infusion of private capital. I think the first step towards that is that the overall business should be in shape, which is where the current tool rooms, lot of tool rooms are struggling. So what is happening today? I think this is more again reiteration of some of the issues that we hear from the tool rooms. So on the revenue side, where we totally On the revenue side, I think we totally understand that there's a lack of customer confidence on the capabilities of the Indian tool rooms, limited capabilities, and we understand that there have been a lot of tool failures and reworks. I mean, that is something that we've also heard from some of the OEMs speaking, that the lead times are increased not because of anything else, but because of reworks and the failures that the Indian tool rooms have to undergo. Now, what does is, in a year, let's say if you were supposed to, or you could have done 10 tools or delivered 10 tools, for example, you end up delivering 4 to 5 or even 6 tools. So essentially, you are not able to serve 4 to 5 tools which you could have potentially served to your customers, because your overall working capital or cash flow is not managed, and you are also getting projects which are low. So, I mean, essentially, most of the Part A and Part B category products for the sheet metal parts are either done captive or are imported. Very few of the Indian tool rooms have that capabilities. So why are we not getting high realization projects is because we are getting Part C, Part D projects which are not high realization projects. So essentially, it impacts your margins. Now, what does is, I mean, of course, we have a lot of, our structure is such that we have to have a lot of tool engineers who are basically engineers, and essentially we have a high manpower cost, which is a fixed cost that we have on our P&L. Now, that fixed cost needs much more projects to have a better utilization of your assets or the fixed cost. Because you are doing less projects in a year, you are not able to work. Basically your fixed costs are hitting your P&L, and you're not able to make the margins that you should make or you intend to make. And that is, of course, because of the low productivity that you are going through. Third is, of course, if you are delaying the projects, then your working capital or the payment cycle gets impacted. So your overall working capital management goes haywire. And of course, that again leads to a vicious cycle of getting low category projects because the customers lose confidence on your capabilities to execute the projects. And essentially, of course, all of that, we are stuck in that cycle because, and we are not, we are expected, and a lot of people said that we need to invest in new technologies. In fact, I also mentioned some of the future trends. But how do we get the cash flow to invest in these? How do we generate the capex needed for that? Is something because we are stuck in that kind of a vicious cycle, and we are not able to generate enough capex to invest in the new capabilities or future areas. So what could be done? Of course, one is securing private capital through which we can invest in new capabilities, and that can run turn the vicious cycle into virtuous cycle. But even to secure that kind of a capital or confidence, we need to do three key steps. The first is in-house cost management. So start better project management. That is something, again, I'm not getting into details of each of the pointers because of the paucity of time, but project management, that needs to be done in a better way. I think that is something which something which resides inside the industry. We are in-house experts of how we can better manage the project, and also the process improvement techniques needs to be deployed. That will start to bring your cost under a little bit of control. Of course, that's not a panacea for all the problems. Once we start having that, then if let's say you were delivering, you should deliver 10, but you started now delivering 8 to 9 projects, that improves the customer confidence. You can pitch for high-value projects. You can also start to leverage some of your, once you have a good view on the resource utilization, you can start to also outsource some of your resources for new monetization sources like ESO, which is another upcoming engineering services outsourcing, which is another upcoming area. And of course, new sectors could be then catered to. And of course, then you will start to have more and more cash to invest on your capabilities development. Essentially, this is the summary of it. First, work on the cost optimization. That will improve your working capital. That will help you generate more revenues. That will also help you improve your capabilities. That would lead you to secure more capital if you look to secure capital from private cycle. And once you have that, then you can start to invest that in, again, capabilities development. And that is how potentially a vicious cycle could be broken and a virtuous cycle could be started. So that's our 2 cents, a little bit from what we understand from the tooling industry experts from you. It's basically just a presentation of our understanding that we've gathered from you. So thank you for your patient hearing. And
for joining us here and being a part of this event. Ladies and gentlemen.